So, um, I've been reading Alan Watts. Well, I haven't been reading Alan Watts. I've been listening to Alan Watts. And he has a really profound voice, and I really wish I had a profound voice like him, but I'm never going to, so that's fine. I can be profound in my own fucking way, because I'm Kurt Alan Sell, and that's how I am. I'm profound as fuck. Anyway, let's get into it. This video is about what happens when you die. And there are three major things that people like to say what happens when you die. One, you're reincarnated. Two, heaven and hell. Three, you become dirt. I kind of started saying 111 because they're all the same thing. All three of these things are the same. In different ways. So now I'm going to go over that. In order to go over the nature of the universe, I think we need to talk about, I've talked about this in previous videos, but the universe is a paradox. Einstein made an equation that perfectly illustrated the paradox of the universe, and it was the equation of E equals mc squared. And so we are both mass with an energy, and that is what we are. We're mass and energy at the same time. Okay, so let's just continue this thought experiment of being both mass and energy, and then what happens to us when we die. Well, the mass perspective of us, from the mass perspective of us, we all have an individual relativistic perspective of the universe that is centered on our own terms, which makes us think that we have this distinct entity that we call I, that's separate from everyone else, and it's due to the relative nature of the universe when you are a distinct mass entity. And that is why we experience the way we do. Humans are a bit more distinct from other creatures because we have a language that's very varied and allows us to describe differences amongst us. And we also have a memory that's built in here that's really dope and amazing. Sometimes I have too good of a memory, so I remember everything that I've ever done that's fucking weird and fucked. Which isn't very fun to have, especially when you also have intense anxiety. And I also want to make everyone happy, so I got lots of shit going on with me, but that's just like for another time. All good things, kind of. Just, it brings me lots of stress. But anyway, we all have this separate entity that we're holding on to, and that entity, when we die, will go in a coffin or turn to dirt or be cremated or become a tree of life or go wherever it's going, but that energy is done. Once your brain stops firing, that ego that you have, that you've created, that's done. It's not going anywhere. It's not jumping into other bodies. That would be absurd. Like, who's facilitating that? It's not going to some energy-only heaven. That's not what's happening here. Okay? To get to what's actually happening other than the dirt part, we gotta jump over to the other side of the equation, right? The energy part of the equation. And Einstein said this: energy is neither created nor destroyed, it merely switches forms. So we, as mass, we're the different forms that it's switching into, but it's all the same energy. And that, when the Zen people are saying nothing exists, all is an illusion, what they're really saying is that mass is impermanent, and the states that mass takes and the forms that energy takes is impermanent, but energy is merely formless because it is everything at once, and that your physical being is merely a blip in time. That's all they're trying to say. They aren't saying that it doesn't exist. They're just saying there's another side of the coin that is just shows that it's all for none. And that's the interesting paradox of the universe. And so when you look at the energy perspective, we are being reincarnated. Only we are everything that's being incarnated at once, because we are the energy, and it's neither created nor destroyed. It has no divisions in between it. So since we are the energy, we just have to be this big blob of everything. What happened after the bang, and that's what we are. And it's changing forms constantly, and that's how it's being reincarnated into different things. But you yourself, the soul inside of you, that's not going to be reincarnated into anything else. But you are everything that's ever been in the energy perspective, not the mass perspective. I can't know what it's like to be anyone else but myself. I'll go into communication and stuff later, but the energy perspective, but from the energy perspective, I am everything else, and you are everything else. And I think that's what Alan Watts said when he was trying to say everyone is God, is we are all the energy that's neither created nor destroyed. And that's my God, is the energy of the universe, because it necessarily creates everything. It is God in that way. And then it is everything, and God is in everything because it is the energy. So how does this play into the myths of individual soul reincarnation and heaven and hell? Well, in my opinion, those myths are told to unenlightened people so that they will behave, because enlightened people know that we're all the same energy. So my well-being is necessarily dependent on everyone else's well-being, because we're all the same, and if they aren't happy, then I'm not happy. But I can be happy in this body but not happy overall. So in my opinion, if you are good right now, then all the newborns, all the new reincarnations will take pleasure in your existence and probably have a more heavenly experience. If you are an asshole, all the newborns you come in contact with will think of being in hell when they interact with you. So your individual actions change where you're going in the next life, because the present and the past necessarily entail the future. So if you are being good right now, then we'll get to where we're going faster, or to the goodness. If you're being bad and only care about this impermanent self and only care about furthering the needs of this self but not the self as a whole, we're gonna be in hell. And your next life will be in hell because you've taken from your next life in this life. Unless your next life is your kids and all of that. So you have to keep in mind all of those things. I understand the two-sidedness of the coin, but the coin's the same thing, really. This is just an illusion. So we got to think about both sides when we're dealing with really, we only think about one side in the West. I'm saying let's take the other side into consideration a little bit too. Now, how human minds function in a oneness way, we do it through language, which is really amazing. Like trees and plants communicate in their own way, and it's very limited in what they can communicate about. Like, they aren't going to communicate about the Kardashians or television. Like, trees are communicating like, oh, grow your roots a little bit further this way, it's really wet over here, or there's lots of nutrients over here, come over, let's have a party. But they aren't doing it with party terms and stuff. That's just my interpretation of what the trees are saying. But they're probably pretty precise in what they're saying. Like, they can probably get it down to the millimeter of where they're going, because they're so connected. With humans, we just have this thing called language, which is very expressive. It's very expressive, but the accuracy of it, it's a little bit ambiguous. And so I have a concept in my mind. It's very like perfect in my mind, and I'm trying to give it to you. So the only things that I have in order to get this concept from me to you is words. And depending on how well I use the words, you might get like a quarter of the concept, you might get like half the concept, you might get the pure concept translated from my mind to your mind, but it's entirely dependent on the language you've been taught and the language I have been taught and how those work together. So Alan Watts says this too, that the universe is very simple, but humans overcomplicate it by describing it. And when we describe it, we make things complicated. And he used a very good demonstration of this in that the nature of a flower is very simple until you talk to a botanist. Because now the nature of the flower just becomes infinite. And there are infinite ways to describe things, and they're not necessarily wrong. Some of them might contradict each other, and then you have to think about, well, what's the real nature of the universe, and then get back to that. But the real nature of the universe is simple. And so sometimes there's reasons to differentiate things and break them all up and categorize things and use pedantic words, and there's reasons for that. It has its pluses, but we must remember that everything is very simple, and that there are infinite ways to describe things, and that none of them are necessarily correct, but it's just a model of reality for us to function better as humanity, survive better as humanity. That's what it's for. It's the same as trees saying, oh, there's some nutrients over here. It's why we created technology and all of these things, because we now live in a society that's much more comfortable than the societies of yore. So we're growing as a humanity through this knowledge, and we're getting to a place where we can survive better, but we must remember the essential nature of the universe, and that it is simple, and that we shouldn't overcomplicate things, because overcomplicating things prevents people from knowing things because they're afraid to know. They're afraid that they don't know enough to know. And there's nothing to know, really. It's just to try to know as you're going down the wave. Like the universe is. You can't really, it changes so rapidly that any model of reality isn't going to fit it 100%. We're just trying to get to a better model of reality that generates more happiness and love, and is more accurate with how things are. But it's not very difficult to be accurate with how things are. It's just we need to stop overcomplicating things. Alan Watts also said to know Brahman, or to think that you know Brahman, is to not know Brahman. And to not know Brahman, and I'm paraphrasing, but to not know Brahman is to know Brahman, like the people that know. And Brahman is the Hindu version of the pantheist universe, like everything is one God. And he basically says that if you think you know Brahman, you don't. But if you know that you don't know Brahman and you're just willing to accept it as it is, you've become enlightened. He also said that if you get talked out of being enlightened, then you aren't enlightened. You have to like grow some balls and be like, I am the universe. You cannot tell me differently. This is my identity and it is real. And if anyone tells you anything different, you have to be like, fuck off, fucktard. So that's what I'm trying to do now. But it's easier said than done, because I know it sounds crazy, but, I mean, Einstein, man. So, we're getting somewhere, and Einstein was a pantheist like me, so, he thought that atheists were crazy. Not crazy, but just lost. So just something to think about. If you want to read more quotes by Einstein, please go to trippyhippies.org, trippyhippies.org. Thank you. Have a wonderful day. Bye.